Hey, Jason, let's see. I got Will. Will is coming. Hello, audience. Hello, hello. Can you hear me well? Everyone can hear me fine? Oh, good. Thank you. Hey there. So, welcome, audience. Thank you for joining us for the last Modern Sales Pros event of the year. Today, we are diving into Sales Planning Power Hour, aligning strategy, execution, and incentives for success in 2025 with some of the brightest minds in the business. So, audience, feel free to go into the chat and tell us where you're tuning in from. We love to see the global footprint of our community. My name is Eduardo. I am a marketing manager here at Modern Sales Pros. So, for those of you not familiar with MSP, we are the world's largest and finest community for more than 35,000 members in sales management, leadership, operations, and enablement. And we are all about taking the road less traveled and bringing you along for the journey with us. Our mission is to help you tackle tough questions and discover opportunities you might not even know exist. And we do this through vibrant live sessions like this one you're about to experience. We have an engaging online forum and our must-attend summits every quarter. And we are doing a lot of in-person events all over the country. So check our schedule. We might have an in-person event near you. If you're not part of MSP yet, we will review your details after this event. And if you are fit to join our community, you will receive an invitation to join us and get access to all the resources that we have. Before we jump in, quick heads up, we are recording this session and we will have some interactive parts to it. So please make sure that you are asking questions. I was talking with the speakers backstage and they were like, it's almost the end of the year. One thing I would love to finish my year strong is to just get all the questions answered. So please go ahead and drop your questions using the chat or the Q&A on your right-hand side. And then after this event is done, I'm going to be taking notes. I'm going to send you a follow-up email with all the key takeaways and some resources that the speakers will be mentioning. And if you like what they're saying, there is a request a button demo with our sponsor button at the top of this page. So go ahead, click that button, and the Exactly team will make sure to get in touch with you later today. And as I mentioned, MSP works with a lot of partners. And today we have Exactly sponsoring this event. Thank you so much, Exactly, for making this possible. I have the two great minds in here, Jason and Will from Exactly. So Will, I'm going to pass the mic to you so you can introduce yourself. Tell us what Exactly does, and then ask Jason to introduce himself, and you can jump right into the content. I'm going to be backstage taking notes, but enjoy, have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Eduardo. And thanks everybody for joining us today. Really happy to be here as we near the end of the year. I'm Will Waters. I lead product marketing here at Exactly. And if you're not familiar with Exactly, we are a revenue performance management organization that helps organizations drive profitable growth, accelerate efficiencies, improve productivity, and reduce costs, and ultimately optimize the performance of their go-to-market organizations. And so, again, very happy to be here. Very excited to be joined by my colleague, Jason Rothbaum. Jason, why don't you give it a minute and introduce yourself?
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be the anchor event of the year. I am a senior principal within Exactly. I'm a resource that's available to our customers. So I provide advice around sales compensation, territory design, quota allocation, job role design, all of those things that go into the sales plan. I've been with Exactly for many years now, 8 years coming up on. I have a background in consulting as well as running sales operations teams for various companies. My team also works to do consulting engagements for more in-depth analysis and more, I guess, more transformative type of needs that our customers will have.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you spending some time with us, Jason. And naturally, as we started to think about this topic around sales planning, operationalizing the sales plans heading into a new year, naturally thought you'd be a great resource because this is something that you do very, very frequently, and you work with a lot of our customers and helping them operationalize, from planning into execution. So appreciate you being here. So I thought for this topic, I wanted to maybe start with just a quick level set. So let's maybe kind of assess the current state. And so would be curious to hear your perspective and kind of how you work with our customers on evaluating whether or not a sales organization is actually ready to execute on that plan. So I think you probably get a lot of these questions around like, okay, hey, are we ready to go? What are the other gates we need to go through? And maybe what are some of the other elements that we need to get sign off from leadership? So maybe we can start there.
Interesting. It's I'm going to be controversial, all right, because that's I understand from listening to other cat webcasts and blogs and reading them, and if you're not controversial, people won't actually tune in or listen. So here's your controversial quote for the day. I find out whether an organization is ready by asking them. Look, it's a simple test. If I speak to people and in late December, early January, the only people who know what the next year's plans are the senior level people, that's kind of a red flag. They haven't done the communication process. If territories are changing, then you're changing relationships. People need time to transition those. So if I ask reps, do you know your new clients? And they say, what? I'm changing territories. That's a red flag. If I ask the sales ops team, have you built the infrastructure to create reports, to monitor any of the new territories, any of the new compensation plans, any of those things? And they say no, then, red flag. So you walk around the organization and you just ask people, are you ready? They're pretty much going to tell you yes or no pretty quickly. So, what's the backup plan if you're not ready? It's a more volatile question.
Yeah, fair enough. And communication is key. Definitely hear you on that one. I think so beyond the kind of going and talking to people and getting straight to the source and getting that information, maybe what are some of the other indicators that pop up that are maybe red flags for you, where maybe we need to rework some things, or maybe we need to reevaluate? What are maybe some examples of that?
Oh, why? Okay. So indicators, if I'm in January and the managers are spending 90% of their time mitigating arguments and talking to their reps and trying to get them to do the right thing, the threats do this or else, that's an indicator that you didn't have a good launch. If I see finger pointing, ops, it cannot support this or something, I take a long, close look at things. But I want to stress, no sales plan survives first contact, right? So you could come up with the greatest thing since sliced bread. You could come up with this highly engineered plan, and the moment it hits the market, there are all these cracks that start to appear. That's expected. That's normal. And what you want to do is when you build these things, when you build a sales plan, everyone knows compensation, so I'll throw this out there. When you do your over quota acceleration, is it low enough to withstand explosive payouts? Is it, have you engineered it so that it's tiered? Something simple, so that if something explodes on you, at least your plan can survive that. You have other tools at your disposal because the plan is not going to be perfect. Contests to fill the gaps. Q1 contests are awesome. I love Q1 contests because it's always my sales leaders coming up to me to pitch me this thing that they think is a revolutionary idea, and it's always the same. It's always the same. Let's throw more money at them. Like, think about this. If your compensation plan is not enough to get people out of bed, paying them more is suddenly going to make them wake up. It doesn't make sense. So that's usually an indicator that something is going wrong, and it's going to start going off the rails a little later on. So if I have my sales leaders approaching me and saying, you know what, we're shallow on the Southeast, let's offer them more money. Okay, that's an indicator something, is not working well. If I hear sales managers constantly screaming and calling me up and screaming to me, that's an indicator. Another indicator, the company changed strategy in Q1. That's never a good sign. I understand we live in a dynamic world, and unless something seismic has happened, changing strategy in Q1, it's something went really wrong in the communication at that point. You know, I find that the indicators in Q1 are really obvious that the sales plan is going off the rails. Q4, it's a little less obvious. But by that time, you're already looking at the new plan and making adjustments.
Got it.
I don't
Got
know.
it.
Well, wait. Well, you live this world too, Will.
Yeah.
What have you seen? What are some indicators for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's all of those are super valid to me, and I would agree. And I think that, living in a product marketing world, naturally the strategy change kind of as the year is beginning, would certainly be a red flag. I also think that, and I think to maybe to David's comment here in the chat,
Yeah, I'm reading it.
going through this kind of with the senior level folks around the third or fourth quarter and making sure that you're not already talking about Q1 when you still got a Q4 to close. Like, that is also something that I think is critically important. And I think, just speaking from experience, and exactly, I think we do or have been doing a very good job of that as well. But yeah, all the things that you said, I think I would agree with. I think the most poignant ones, again, for me, are kind of the strategy changes and making sure that we have the mechanisms in place that are going to motivate reps. To your point, if we feel like we need to immediately put forth, certain kind of short-term incentives, maybe we're not configured in the right way. So I definitely agree with you on that one.
And I want to address that as well. I don't think it's black or white. I don't think that you completely withhold communication. Okay, so let me, to those that are listening, read Dave's comment here. Most clients I've dealt with do the planning at the senior level, third, fourth quarter. I'd love it if that happened. But they don't share with the teams until January, so the reps don't take their eye off the ball in the current year. Yeah, but if that's great for transactional sales, but if you're dealing with longer term strategic sales, you need to build pipeline. You need to start setting the stage for a successful Q1, Q2. So if January 15th, when you hold your sales kickoff, you're telling people the new strategy, we're not selling hardware anymore. We're going to now sell recurring revenue. All right. It's the 15th of January. I think you just missed your Q1 number. I think there's a fine line you have to draw. And I'm sorry, it's not a hard line. It's a gray area you have to maneuver within. So I do think you have to start communicating in Q4.
Yeah. And that's actually a good segue into kind of my next question is, so, we've kind of talked about some of the things that naturally come up towards the end of the year, maybe in the beginning of the year, that, might be red flags or might be things that, are kind of flashing red lights for us. But I guess as we think about moving into that new year, so again, David's comment is poignant here for this question. So we're in this Q4 mode. As we gear up for that new fiscal year, how would you think about kind of making sure that as we operationalize, it's aligning with the broader company objectives? Again, maybe it's the strategy is set towards the Q3 timeline, but how do we start to kind of align the incentives with what the go-to-market might look like, and then ultimately make sure that we're going to be able to execute upon that in the next year?
Now I'm afraid of Dave in the comments. I think I've worked with Dave at Xero before. We did a consulting engagement there once. Most companies have their sales plan locked into the year right now. So it's a little last minute to do that scrambling, but it does occur. First, let me define what the sales plan is, right? So you have a top-down goal that comes in and a bottom-up goal it's built from the sales force. The top-down goal is very different. It's supposed to be from comparable company analysis, what the market is demanding that your company produces. The board of directors has poured in money, what they expect stuff to produce. The bottoms up, that's what your sales force can currently do. And you built an engine. This is what it's currently able to do. The top-down number may require you to have a Corvette engine. The bottom-up number may say that you have a Volvo. So there's going to be a gap in between, and that gap has to be filled. That filling of the gap is the sales plan. How do you drive productivity? How do you turn that Volvo engine into a Corvette engine? To me, when I ran sales ops teams, that was always the shopping list. That was the fun part of the year. In order to meet your goals, I need 30 more heads. I need this investment in technology, and I need a lock for my office door. Those are the types of things that you go on your shopping list. So at this time of year, you should be trying to get that shopping list approved. The gap the shopping list may not be approved. And for companies that are looking to launch their sales plan in January, I'd assume that shopping list is written by now and it's going through the approval process in January when the budgets come down. If your shopping list isn't approved, you're going to have to scramble a little. And the sales ops team needs to figure out a way to fit gap that missing element that you were relying on to drive productivity. So I hope that answers that.
Yeah.
From a technology perspective, Will, what are you guys usually doing at this part of the year?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it does start obviously like with the plans and with the planning. And so I think when we think about, and I guess when I think about kind of the operationalization, is it's making sure that these things are communicated effectively, the information is visible to the go-to-market teams, and then ultimately their understanding of any relevant changes, whether it be to their quotas, territories, so on and so forth. Naturally, there's also the implication of things like promotions, team shifts. If you have, maybe a completely net new team, those are things that naturally would need to be deployed within the solutions that you have at your disposal. And so there is this need for flexibility within how you can actually operationalize, kind of taking it from a spreadsheet based to actually disseminating the information to a sales organization can be challenging in absence of some sort of singular solution that can, perform that task and automate a lot of the relevant tasks associated with disseminating the information. So again, from a technology standpoint, that's what we hear most from our customers. And they say, hey, we've got all these different changes that we need to deploy that are even outside of the strategic changes that we want to deploy. How do we bring all those things together in an optimal way to, accelerate the ways in which and the speed in which we can get these things out to our teams? Because to your point, if we're kind of disseminating this information, a month into the quarter, are we kind of killing our Q1 number already, or should we be communicating sooner? Should we be seeding some of these concepts, well in advance? But to David's point, are we actually, taking our sales team's eye off the ball for communicating this too early? So it's a difficult balance for sure. So I think what we find more often than not, customers are wanting something that enables them to accelerate the ways in which they can communicate and deploy these changes and deploy these new concepts, which comes in the form of solutions, technology solutions.
It sounds almost like it's a long-term process, and if we're talking about this in December, it's you're going to have to wait a little.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's tough, obviously, because there's also kind of these capacity concerns as well. You have to get sign off from so many different people in so many different ways as you lead up to it. So that's always another thing. This concept of this cross-functional stakeholder group that needs to sign off on all of these different mechanics, it's critically important. And that's actually kind of what I wanted to talk to you about next, because I think a lot of our customers are saying, hey, these large organizations, first of all, like, do we have the right people in the room to make these decisions? And then ultimately, how do we make sure that we have consistency and consistent sign-offs across all of the relevant functional groups? So maybe you can talk a little bit about, this concept of cross-functional collaboration, how and why and where should we get folks involved across the relevant teams?
That is a really interesting political question. No, war stories. When I ran sales ops teams, I've sat in finance, I've sat in HR, I've sat in sales. And legal was never on the same floor as I was. It's in any case. When I sat in finance, sales would come to us with with their proposals, and they would say, model these out. What could we get approved? And then I would come in with best practices saying, come in, try to adjust it this way, and it'll bring the cost down here. It'll mitigate the risk there. When I sat in sales, completely different conversation. Don't give this to finance until the last possible minute. But look, in the end, you're spending real money. In the end, there's risk, a lot of risk to a company of not developing these things properly. So it is, as hard as it sounds, you don't have to get necessarily everyone enthusiastic about it, but you do need to get everyone involved. If you're designing territories that are well balanced and are meant to give everyone equal pay opportunity, all right, you're going to end up with some underserviced and overserviced customers. The Midwest is going to be one territory, 2 blocks in New York are going to be another. Someone has to say from somewhere in HR, in finance, some department is going to have to say, that is not optimal. That doesn't mitigate risk, right? So going until the end of the year without getting cross-functional approval or cross-functional buy-in or cross-functional awareness, it's going to blow up on you at some point. It's going to hit a brick wall, and you're going to end up going well past January 15th before you announce. If you need to enact a sales plan, and part of it is to hire 30 new people, have you told HR? Are they staffed up on that? Can they do that? Do they have a pipeline into recruits to do that? Simple things. So I think it's not important, it's necessary to get cross-functional awareness.
Yeah. And maybe
you will.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to kind of turn this around back on you and I'm a little bit worried about the response, because it might be another controversial kind of answer. One thing that I deal with in my role is this kind of, I live in the world of cross-functional collaboration and needing to pull inputs and push outputs to different teams and make sure that there's a coordinated effort, to make sure that we're having success across projects. And so one of the things that I think about is, how do I mitigate friction that may come with competing priorities across different groups? And so would be curious to know, within the planning process, maybe what are some of your, what's your perspective on how to maybe mitigate some of that friction that might come in working across these 4 or 5 different teams that you alluded to?
People are afraid of friction. I
knew I was like a little bit worried about your response to this one, but yeah.
Look, I guess I come at it from an external consulting's perspective, because if everyone got along, we'd never have a job. Look, friction is not a bad thing. Friction shows that there's the risk is being mitigated, the risk is being addressed, the strategy's been thought out. There doesn't have to be hand-holding and group collective chanting for everyone to love the plan. It's, can we agree that this is a workable solution? Can we agree that it fits into the finance plans? It fits into the HR plans? It fits into the marketing plans. It's a puzzle piece, but it doesn't have to necessarily be perfectly fitting. I mean, we've all taken puzzle pieces and smacked them into place, and there's a little white gap underneath them. That, to me, that's what it is. But I think Dave had another comment in there. We don't have to get along, but we better be ready by early mid Q4. It should, because there's a whole downstream process that needs to happen. Once you have the sales plan agreed to, now you have to start building the territories. Now you have to start building out the quota allocation, the job roles, all of that, the recs. You have to get legal to approve the language. So there is a Q4 thing. And yes, I am used to dealing with silos of influence and matrixed organizations, but it's more rare to work with a center of excellence than it is with a company with a larger company with matrixed organizations, where each individual organization has a president. I mean, sales can be a shared function, but You have different priorities within an organization. So yeah, there's going to be friction. Sorry. And,
No,
and Will, I'm throwing it back on you once again.
yeah,
You have the most friction of anyone you have to deal with.
I mean,
You have to
I
deal
don't know.
with
I
all
don't
the
know about
guts
that.
behind a company.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I actually, it points to something I was going to talk about a little bit later in the conversation. But I think it's, when I think about dealing, or I shouldn't say dealing with, I should say working with relevant stakeholders that maybe have these competing priorities, or maybe they're focused on different, topics, and they have their own individual goals that they need to achieve. I kind of bring it back to, what are our shared objectives and what are our shared KPIs? And so what are the things that as a collective or as a business we're tracking towards to make sure that we're successful, right? So there should always be some level of connectivity between the objectives, the KPIs, so on and so forth. And so that's kind of what I harken back to is, okay, if we're going to be deploying this, or we're making this decision, or we're doing this activity, what is the ultimate goal that it serves from kind of a business level or a corporate level, if you will. So I'd be kind of keen to hear your perspective on that. That's kind of how I think about it across the various projects that in teams that I work with. But as in terms of the sales planning process and the actual efficacy of some of the changes that we're determining, what are some ways in which, or maybe what are some examples of the KPIs that you would want to be able to track and deploy to, again, maybe foster that shared connectivity within the sales planning process?
It's a okay. So the KPIs are usually a discussion that I have with senior leadership, and I'm not talking about sales plan KPIs.
Right.
What's the strategy for the coming year? Last week, or God, it was 2 weeks ago. I'm sorry. Time flies when you're having fun at this time of year. 2 weeks ago, a company that is in our sphere, they made the decision that they are not going to do market share play anymore. They want to maximize profitability. Okay, so KPIs change right off the bat. It's not a volume play anymore. It's a margin play. Okay, so how do I determine whether or not they're meeting their KPIs? Well, they've kind of told me that the strategy of the company is no longer to go after market share. It's to go after margin. Okay, so I'm looking at pricing KPIs. I'm looking at margin improvement KPIs. Right, that's pervasive around the entire organization. Right, marketing changes all of a sudden. We're pushing certain products. Right, we're pushing certain value that the company provides in order to drive up our pricing. Right, I'm measuring reps on margin percentages rather than share of wallet within a company. So I think I know it's a cop out, but my KPIs are largely dictated to me.
Yeah.
I'm in sales. I'm a sales operations person, right? So KPIs are dictated to me by the company. I interpret those KPIs, and then I create reporting around them. Okay, so we had to build out, or we are in the process right now of building out ways to track margin and price improvement within the sales compensation plans. Okay, can we measure margin on a per deal basis? No, we can't. Okay, can we measure it on a per account basis? Yes, we can. Can we set per account goals? There's our new KPI.
Yeah.
So sorry, it's a cop out of an answer.
No. I think it's a good answer, though. I think it's because you touched on a couple things that I think are critically important, where it's like there's the feasibility element as well as like, are we ready and are we capable of measuring these capabilities, and how do they connect with the overarching goals, again, that we're handed? And I think that's where the shared kind of connectivity comes from, as I kind of alluded to before. It's like, hey, if we're tracking towards this specific corporate metric, that gives us a bit more of a basis to work together on how we're going to improve it, and also the mechanics behind how we're going to actually improve. So I think that's super helpful. I guess like on that point, you called out a couple specific things like margin and specific products and things of that nature that make their way into a compensation plan. I'm curious because this question comes up a lot this time of year or even a couple months ago. What are some of these more innovative or new kind of themes that you're seeing specifically around kind of compensation plan design? Is there some commonality around, hey, businesses are shifting in this direction, and so the reflection of that business shift means we got to make some maybe new adjustments to a plan or things that maybe we haven't done before. So curious to hear.
Don't forget, I want to ask you the same question. So
Okay.
I tend to ramble.
Yeah.
Okay, so wow, you can do a whole economics paper on how markets run in trends and how you could spot common themes. Last year, the soup du jour was consumption plans.
Yeah.
And how to construct those and build pricing based off consumption, whether you have terms for convenience, whether you have minimum commit levels, all those fun things that go with consumption. This year, seems like companies are starting to shift more towards margin again. So from a compensation perspective, what are some of the tricks to driving margin within a plan? If that's I think that's what you were asking.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me throw a couple things out. The gold standard is a per deal margin modifier, right? Look, compensation plans are really bad at some things, like getting people to input into their CRM. Notoriously bad at that. But wow, compensation plans are Olympic athletes at driving margin. It's like when I hear a client say we want to drive margin, I immediately think, yes, I'm providing value, right? So a compensation plan that has margin modifiers. Okay, margin modifiers are different than kickers. Kickers only pay you more if you can achieve a certain margin level, and you measure it on a percent. Measuring margin by volume, I know I'm kind of moving in and out here, but measuring margin on volume has a 98, I did an analysis once, 98% correlation with measuring revenue. Volume is volume, and you still increase the probability of a deal by discounting so you can make more volume. What you want to measure is margin percentage. And on a per deal basis, if you pay more, if the rep can achieve a certain percentage, that's very motivating. If you pay less, if they achieve a low percentage, that's even more effective. Carrots don't work as well as sticks. So margin modifier goes both up and down, adjusting the commission percentage based on the margin percentage achieved. Another method, a lot of companies will say that, look, we want to achieve margin percentage, but we do not want to mess with quota. You have to hit your quota. I don't care how you do it. Okay, then you have tiering over quota. Hit your quota. That's the number one priority. What we have to report to the board is we hit our quota. But after quota, we're going to redefine what a top performer is. If you get I'm going to make up numbers. Okay, so please, anyone listening to this, don't use these numbers. They are completely pulled out of thin air. If you achieved a 25% margin, your over quota acceleration goes up 125%. If you achieved 30% margin, it goes up 150%. If you achieved 35% margin, it goes up 200%. So you tier your over quota acceleration based off of your territory's margin achievement. Okay, more tricks. You want to drive margin? You could do it by product mix. You could do it by vertical type. You can also create a separate measure for product mix. Not as effective. You could create a separate measure for margin percentage. So if you achieve a certain margin percentage, we'll give you a bonus. It's not as effective. I like the per deal stuff.
Nice.
Will.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on a few things that I think I won't get into this as much of the specifics as you went into, but I think at a high level, I think what I hear from a lot of our customers is, as we see, and I think you maybe alluded to this as well, like we live in a pretty dynamic market in the sense that things are changing pretty continuously. And I think one of the things that a lot of our customers experience is that, look, if we have a fundamental shift in our business, and that, to your point, maybe it's we need to be focused more on profitability and profit margin, that naturally has to manifest itself within how we compensate our sellers, because that is how we actually drive the right type of revenue. And so naturally what we see is we see a little bit of that shift. There's also, and here at Exactly, I work a lot within our pricing and packaging. And so there's natural shifts within just how we price, especially for software. Like, so pricing and packaging, the consumption-based model, as you had mentioned, is definitely emerging. A lot more of the kind of AI dynamics within pricing also is going to have to manifest itself in compensation plans in some ways. And so those are some of the themes that we see. So consumption, what's the impact on AI, maybe some of the outcome-based work, some of the profitability motivations that a lot of our businesses that we work with have. All of those things, again, naturally are a little bit more macro themes, but again, they definitely kind of manifest.
Let's bring it down.
Yeah.
Let's bring it down to a little bit more a tactical level. So
Yeah.
let me pick one of those, the more exciting one, AI on pricing. What trends have you seen, and how is it impacting what you do?
Yeah. So specifically around AI pricing, and naturally, there's a lot of publicity around agents, assistants, co-pilots, things of this nature. And I think a lot of companies are still trying to reconcile how they should be pricing. There are some organizations that are probably more kind of at the, let's say, the leading edge, that are thinking a little bit more about outcome-based pricing. However, I think that there is an area where, or there's, at least I think from my perspective, there needs to be more advancements in order to be able to facilitate true outcome-based pricing, and actually deploy that. And so what I mean by that is, like, can you actually have AI functionality that is delivering definitive outcomes as a relative value to the customer? I'm not sure, again, and I'm not as read up on on AI at a more macro level as many others. And this is definitely not an AI webinar, so please take what I'm saying with a
But you've said AI enough that it'll pop up in any sort of search now.
Yeah, exactly. But that to me, I think, is an interesting concept that many organizations, or many of these kind of generative AI organizations, are talking about. Now, how that is actually going to come to fruition, I think, remains to be seen. I think we're just seeing bits and pieces of that from a pricing perspective. So,
all right.
Now I'm going to have our product leaders kind of come at me and say, "Hey, why were we talking about AI?" No, just kidding.
It's Jason's fault. He asked.
Well, cool. So I know, and probably intended to go about 35 minutes. We're kind of nearing the end of our time together. I did want to ask one more, I guess, more broad question, so I can hear you kind of unwind a lengthy response to this, because I think it's a meaty one. It's kind of a two-parter too. So this concept of how do you build plans that are scalable, but then we also want to make sure that we can effectively evolve those plans, and maybe, again, to the tracking point. So how do we build plans that are scalable? And then ultimately, how would you advise on evolving those plans as necessary throughout the year? Again, big, meaty question there.
It is. And let me break it out into two parts. And the sales plan. How do you make a sales plan scalable? I always get that question too. And I maintain that if you do everything right, scalable should mean that you can increase the ask of it. You should increase the people going into it. You should increase things that it's required to do without needing to tear it down and rebuild it. So I'll define scalability like that. The way that I try building scalability is from let's do plan design. From a plan design perspective, I try to make sure that there's nothing in there that increases financial risk, such as And when I say financial risk, meaning blow up the plan, I've now paid out much more than I anticipated and come in lower than I anticipated on producing sales. Did I mitigate the risk of explosive payouts for things I didn't see? Did I make sure that there are no annuity payments that are going to be paying out for the next 3 or 4 years? Did I make sure that the curves are market competitive? When designing territories and quota, did I design things so that there's, as much as I can foresee now, no gross under or over serving? When I calculated the sales size, not created the sales size, did I design the proper spans of control or the correct team structures so the cost of sale, is within reason? If I did the basic blocking and tackling on designing those things to mitigate risk, then I probably made it scalable to the point where it meets the current plan, it meets the current strategy. So once more, to unwind that, I have to mitigate financial risk. How do you mitigate financial risk? Don't explode payouts. So if someone sells a massive amount or the company as a whole overachieves, did I do the modeling so that I have made sure that the accelerators are not paying out so much compared to the sales that I am generating? When I design territories, did I make it so that if I increase quota levels, all of a sudden I've got to rework the territories because now I've got all sorts of underserved, overserved clients? I want to make sure that I've designed things so that I have room to increase quotas, right? Let me give you a simple mistake. I said it before. I try to equalize quotas so that the entire Midwest is one territory, New York City, 2 blocks is another territory. That is not scalable. But if I want scalability, I'm going to have to make the quota in the Midwest a little bit lower, the New York quota a little bit higher, so that if we want to increase, there's room, right? If I want to increase by 25%, okay, I don't have to necessarily increase the Midwest to now include Southern California.
Yeah.
Right? I've designed the territory so that it's a little bit lower so that it can absorb more growth. Simple things like that. When I size the sales team, all right, I'm not overstaffing with the anticipation of future growth. I've staffed either a little below or at the production per rep production that I need. Okay, so if we need to staff up, it's easier to staff up than staff down.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Appreciate
how you do it.
Yeah, I know. It's, like I said, it's a meaty question, and I appreciate you unwinding that. We did have a question. Sorry, I missed this a few minutes ago, Richard. Specifically about margins. So, can you maybe get a little bit more specific on defining margins, particularly for software as a service, and does setting price ranges per product accomplish the same thing? So, maybe a pricing question plus a comp question there. I don't know if you wanted to take a stab at that one, Jason.
Oh, that's a rough one. So I'm reading the full question from Richard now. I'm sorry. The setting price range per product accomplish this same thing. Okay, you can let me tackle it from a rep level. Margin is usually an established pricing by finance, saying that if you charge this much, we'll achieve this much margin on a per sale basis. But then companies will give reps the ability to negotiate pricing, and they'll set a floor. They'll say, okay, you have to go to deal desk if you go below this floor. Okay, what do you think is going to happen? Everyone's going to be right above the floor where they would need to go to the deal desk. Okay, so the company will all of a sudden say, we need to increase margin. Everyone's already priced it right above floor. So it takes a long time. So what I like to say is that there's a stated margin, an acceptable margin, and a PIP margin. And you set your pricing tiers, once again, a little bit higher with breathing room. And you set an allowable discount, and you put in compensation plans that demotivation to discount, and you should be okay with achieving your margin. Wow, did I speak fast right there? I hope somewhere in the universe out there understood or unwinds that later.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, you went the direction I was hoping you were going to go, which is, again, there's a few different factors at play within every deal. And so I think within price strategy and price setting, naturally you want to have margin, an effective margin built into that price. However, when we talk about sales execution, and to your point about motivating certain behaviors and as it relates to discounting, building that into the compensation plan, as is an effective strategy. And I think a lot of organizations would consider that. Again, there needs to be solutions that can actually help facilitate that process. So you need solutions that can actually meet that type of complexity demand when you do the calculation process and you do the reconciliation with the plan. But that's definitely, how I would, a lot of our customers think about it as well. So appreciate the question, Richard.
Thank you. I would stress also that I know we're out of time, but you can reach out to Will or myself anytime. We can be reached on LinkedIn, or you could just email us directly at exactly. Will?
Yeah. So we have, and we'll put some notes in the follow up. So Richard obviously would welcome, or David, I know you've been active on the chat as well, would welcome to continue these conversations. We'll be following up with some specific links where you can get in touch with us. The one thing that I did just kind of want to finish on is I kind of led with, and I wouldn't be good at my job as a product marketer if I didn't at least allude to a lot of the topics that we talked about today, where we think about the overall kind of end-to-end planning process, and then ultimately taking those plans and operationalizing them, measuring them and monitoring them throughout the year, governing and administrating the incentive programs that you put in place, and then ultimately being able to track the efficacy of these plans that we put in place. All of these types of processes are processes that we serve for customers here at Exactly, and we do that on a unified intelligent revenue platform. And so if you have specific questions, or if you're looking for different solutions that maybe help you transition from the planning process, or just a unified solution that's going to surface data and insights to help inform your planning and incentive design process, Exactly would definitely be interested in speaking with you. We'll have a link if you want to see a demonstration of some, our product capabilities in these areas. More than happy to schedule some time with you as well. So just wanted to finish it there. Again, as the product marketer in the room, wanted to make sure that I give a quick pitch on Exactly and how we support customers throughout all of these processes and topics that we discussed today. Obviously, want to thank Jason for being here. He has a wealth of knowledge on these areas. He's more than happy to hop on a call with anybody on the call here as well. So, Eduardo, I'll pass it back to you. I think you're going to wrap us up and maybe talk about how we're going to be sharing some of this information as a follow-up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Will. Thank you so much, Jason. I love the the hot takes, Jason. Really fun. If you want to hear from the team exactly and schedule that demo, there is a button at the top of this page, audience. You can just click that and the team will get in touch with you later today. As easy as that. Speakers, thank you so much for getting all this knowledge to our audience today. Audience, just a reminder, all the recording and the key takeaways and all the resources that Exactly is making available for you will be on my follow-up email later today. So watch out for an email from me, Eduardo, in your inbox later today so you can finish your year strong. Once again, thank you Exactly for sponsoring this event. This was amazing. Again, there is a button on the top of this page for you to hear from the team. And audience, thank you so much for joining us today. You are the best part of MSP, and I will see you next year. I hope everyone has a great holiday season, and January, we'll be back here with more events. Will and Jason, we can go backstage and hang out for a few minutes. All right, thank you, audience. Thank you, speakers.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Bye.